Good morning.
I want to talk about the bigger picture, but I can't get past the story you've written in the paper today. It's this appalling story of a woman that you met who says she was raped by Russian soldiers. How did you meet her? Tell us her story.
So the story of this woman came to light amidst lots of accusations from Ukrainian authorities that rapes had taken place. I mean, I think it's well recognized these days, finally, after decades, that this is rape is a weapon of war that is often seen in conflicts as a way of waging war on the civilian population. So we'd heard these reports, and then it emerged last week that one case had actually been filed to the prosecutor general in Ukraine, and that they were taking this up as the first, documented, individualized case. We have been in contact with the women concerned over the course of the last week, trying essentially to say to her that there was a bigger picture, bigger story to be told in her story, and that if she was prepared to be so brave as to come forward, that it could, put flesh on the bones of what at that point had just been a series of inspecific allegations. And she agreed in the end to speak to us. Because she believed that that it was too easy to discount these stories without an individual coming forward and sharing her own story, and that she felt it was very important that people knew that this really was happening. She knows of other women to whom it has happened. In her case, she reported it to police really because she managed to escape with the help of neighbours with her young son and got to her in-laws' house, who then dispatched her to her sister-in-law's house, and it was her sister-in-law who essentially sort of took her to the police in a state of shock, and she reported her story. And really, as she said to me after that, there was no going back. I could easily have stayed silent, like so many other people have, because they're afraid. But once I told the police, there was no going back.
And so she lived on a farm with her husband and a 4-year-old son. Russian soldiers come to the farm.
Mm,
They kill her husband. They shoot him
yeah.
outside. And one interesting thing is that this said, "I shot your husband because he's a Nazi," which shows the sort of propaganda that Russian soldiers are believing. And then what happened to her?
Well, just to go back from this of why they said that about her being a Nazi. I mean, she spoke in great detail in the story, and obviously it's what just wasn't possible to cover every detail. What they were doing in the village was looking for a place to stay. So when they originally came to her house, they shot one of her dogs in the front yard, thinking that someone had just abandoned the house and left the dog, so they wanted to get into the house. They then went to a neighbour's house, and they discovered clothing with a yellow armband, which is worn by a lot of the territorial defence volunteers, but increasingly by anyone to show they're Ukrainian. And they came back to the house and said, "Your neighbour's a Nazi," and started remonstrating with them. They then found in her husband's car a camouflage jacket that he'd worn, and this is where this Nazi allegation, obviously this is a brainwashing that Vladimir Putin has told the troops that that's what they're coming for. But essentially they were going around looking for any, signs that these people were combatants or Nazis in their saying. So they were aware that the woman was there. It appears that they came back and deliberately shot her husband in order to then rape her, which they did. Two men several times over the course of several hours while she was inside the house. She'd been sheltering in the boiler room because there was intense shelling around there with her young son, and he was in the boiler room throughout the ordeal. She tried to escape. The men had come and they were drunk, and they left and they came back, and in that sort of she her sense of time is obviously quite scrambled, but she thinks it was about 20 minutes where she was trying to persuade her son to leave, but he was frozen to the spot because he was so frightened. And in that time, they came back and raped her again. And they eventually, because they were drinking, they eventually, they sat down in chairs in the house and fell asleep. And at that point, she was able to escape with her son by telling him horrendously that they would be shot if they stayed. And that was the only way that she could get him to move.
It's an appalling story, and you've not even given all the details, Catherine. But thank you so much for telling it in the paper and for telling it us now, because it's really important that because we've heard these stories as rumours, haven't we? And this is really
Exactly.
putting it as an actual example.
Yes, exactly. And, to have an account that was so verifiable, because a man has been identified. He actually gave him her name, and he's been identified by the Ukrainian authorities, one of her assailants, who's believed to have been killed. Although she's been told that we've seen photographs, but she can't really absorb it. She doesn't know whether to believe it. There is a second Russian who they have yet to identify. But the fact that this was a reported case, that we had a location, I know her name. Obviously, we didn't use her name. It's now, going forward to investigation, and that we were able to corroborate it, that she was able to describe it in such extraordinary detail and with such courage, made this such an important story to prove to people that this is really happening.
Yeah, well, Catherine, thank you for doing it and for joining us this morning. That's Catherine Philp from Kyiv there. Her little boy runs out of the house, there's his dead dad, and he sees a body, doesn't know it's his dad, and he says, will we get shot the same as this man here? And he still doesn't know his dad is dead, and he's now in Ternopil, and he tells the other children, my favourite dog was killed. He doesn't know about his dad. When we go to a shop, he asks me to buy a donut for Papa. Just every detail of this story is just absolutely, it's spine chilling, it's awful, but it's well worth, and it's very important to read. It's Catherine Philp in the paper today.